Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
So if the report comes back and says we can't indict a sitting president, or we found no evidence of a crime committed by the president, therefore you're not going to see the underlying evidence, what can you do?
Well, first of all, those are two different things. If they say we've seen no evidence of a crime, then they ought to say that and say why, and that's fine. But
would you want the underlying evidence there?
Yes, we do want the underlying evidence. The American people are entitled to know it. And Congress is entitled to know it because it's our job to hold the president accountable. Because it's our job to hold any president accountable. But Rosenstein went much further, and Barr did too, because what they're saying is a president cannot be indicted. No matter how much evidence, the president cannot be indicted. And if you then say, because the president cannot be indicted, you're not going to give the evidence of his crimes, if any, to the public, you're saying the president cannot be held accountable.
So you'll sue in that case?
We will subpoena. We will do whatever we have to do.
Back in 1974, the House committees were able to get access to the grand jury evidence against Richard Nixon. Can you get that evidence in this case?
Maybe. Our lawyers we will do everything we can to get that evidence. We'll do everything we can to get whatever evidence. We are starting this investigation. Tomorrow, we will be issuing document requests to over 60 different people and individuals, from the White House to the Department of Justice, Donald Trump Jr., Alan Weisselberg, to begin the investigations to American people about obstruction of justice, corruption, and abuse of power.
So that would include John Kelly, the former chief of staff, Don McGahn, the former White House counsel?
I would imagine. I mean, I don't have the list in front of me, but we will be releasing the list tomorrow of over 60 entities, people, etc.
How about if Robert Mueller comes back and says definitively we find no collusion by President Trump? Is that a conclusion you'll accept?
Well, we'd want to see the evidence behind that and see the validity of that, and we could agree or disagree. But this investigation goes far beyond collusion. We've seen all the democratic norms that we depend on for democratic government attacked by the administration. We've seen attacks on the freedom of the press, the press called the enemy of the people. We've seen attacks on the Department of Justice, attacks on the FBI, attacks on judges. All of these are very corrosive to liberty and to the proper functioning of government and to our constitutional system. All of this has to be looked at, and the facts laid out for the American people.
Do you think the president obstructed justice?
Yes, I do. It's very clear that the president obstructed justice. It's very clear. 1,100 times he referred to the Mueller investigation as a witch hunt. He tried to protect Flynn from being investigated by the FBI. He fired Comey in order to stop the Russian thing, as he told NBC News. He's dangled he's threatened, he's intimidated witnesses in public.
If that's the case, then is the decision not to pursue impeachment right now simply political, if you believe he obstructed justice?
No, we have to do the investigations and get all this. We do not now have the evidence all sorted out and everything to do an impeachment. Before you impeach somebody, you have to persuade the American public that it ought to take. persuade enough of the opposition party voters or the Trump voters that you're not just trying to.
It's a very high bar.
Yeah, it is a very high bar. That you're not just trying to steal to reverse the results of the last election. We may or may not get there, but what we have to do is protect the rule of law.
This week, the New York Times reported that the president overruled his White House counsel and the intelligence agencies wanted to deny a top-secret security clearance to Jared Kushner. In your view, even though the president has the right to give a security clearance to anyone he wants to give it to, was that an abuse of power?
Yes, I think it was an abuse of power. Look, the president has a right to do a lot of things, but he can abuse his power in doing that. Members of Congress have the right to vote for or against the bill. But if they do so because someone paid them $50,000 to do so, that's an abuse of power. It's also a crime. So you can do things that are within your power that are abuses of power and that are crimes.
One final question. The president put out a tweet early yesterday morning, when it showed up on the screen, very proud of perhaps the greatest golf course anywhere in the world, also furthers UK relationship. That, of course, is a Trump golf course in Scotland. Many ethics experts come out and said that's a violation of the Emoluments Clause. Do you agree?
It certainly seems to be. He seems to have violated the Emoluments Clause in a lot of different ways, and that's one of the things we should be investigating under abuses of power. Let me say this: Congress has to do its job, and Congress has to do its job whether it's investigating the administration, holding the administration accountable, which the Republicans in Congress absolutely refuse to do. And dealing with our other problems. We passed last week for the first time in the House, for the first time in 20 years, some real gun control legislation that the American people by margins of 90% want. The Republicans refuse to hold hearings on it. We
you had divisions among Democrats in that vote.
Not much. We got 240 votes or something like that. We held hearings on the Trump administration policy of tearing children away from the arms of their mothers. These are things that Congress ought to be looking at, that the last Congress, the Republicans in Congress simply acted as handmaidens, as shields to the administration to shield it from any kind of accountability. We must give accountability to the American people. We must hold the administration's feet to the fire, and we must show if there are abuses of power, if there are obstructions of justice, if there's a threat to the rule of law, we must protect the rule of law so that the democracy that was handed down to us is just as intact after this president leaves as it was before he came in.
Congressman Nadler, thank you for your time this morning.
You're welcome.
It is Monday, the 4th of March of 2019, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is River City Hash Mondays. We've put it all together for you folks. Had to dice it up, chop it down, get it to fit, get all the flavors to meld, and you know what? It works. It's River City Hash Mondays. Another one of those weekends. Donnie is not feeling too well. Hasn't been feeling too well since he went over to Vietnam to meet up with Kim Jong-un. Hey, let's not forget, Kim Jong-un loved Otto to death. I mean, Trump said so. And we all love Otto to death, too. At least Trump did. Hey, he spent over 2 hours at CPAC. Just, my God. 25th Amendment is not enough. I think we're going to need a bigger 25th Amendment, actually. Definitely touched by the knowledge that Mueller is closing in. And I actually don't think it's the Mueller probe that has him the most worried. But the Southern District of New York, I think they might be touching his little fear center a little bit, if he has one. Well, the fear center in this guy is to react by lashing out, and that's what he does. Looks like Fox is actually state TV. We've all known it for a long time, but now we have corroborating evidence of this, at least by Jane Mayer. So, really a comprehensive article out of the New Yorker by Mayer, just breaking it down. Something that we all knew, but it's good to have it in one concise package to at least teach the people out there who don't pay as much attention. And I don't know. I guess, since I never... this is a confession, okay? I have not seen one full episode of The Apprentice. So maybe the little brainwashing signal never got to me because I don't get it. They see this guy as some sort of leader? They really believe that? I mean, what I saw, what I was able to see of The Apprentice, the guy wasn't a boss. Give me a break. If anything, he was definitely the kind of a person that I would never want to work for. But that doesn't mean as if I'm the epitome of I don't know, success. Of course not. But I would definitely not want to work for a creep like this guy. Oh, I should mention also that whenever they talk about a woman being a bad boss, there's something even worse about a woman being a bad boss. I've had men who were bad bosses, and I've had women who were bad bosses, and there's no difference. Women bosses who are bad are just as bad as men bosses who are bad. There is absolutely no difference. But if I'm going to have a bad boss, I might as well have myself as a bad boss. Then I have no one to blame but me. Unless I was Donald Trump, then I'd blame everything and everyone but me. Yeah, he's blaming the Democrats for the collapsed negotiations with North Korea. Really? You know, Donnie, there was, an 18, 21-hour gap in time? You didn't have to stay up and watch CNN and the hearings. You could have taken a nap. Jeez. But no. Apparently, when he walked out abruptly, it was because he heard some news that Cohen had divulged and he just couldn't keep his mind focused. I'll say this about Bill Clinton, okay? You know, in psychology, the idea of compartmentalizing was always considered to be a negative because at some point the dissonance will arise and all those compartments that you've walled off are going to be opened up and you're going to be deluged with all of this stuff that hasn't been rectified, hasn't been dealt with, has been compartmentalized. But I'll say this about Clinton. He was able to compartmentalize and keep government running. I mean, he didn't, he didn't hesitate, like in the Balkans, for instance, for good or ill. But some people did think that he was doing a wag the dog. I have an understanding of the geopolitics at the time. He wasn't wagging the dog, but he was sure forced into some decisions that seemed a little too cute by half. So makes you wonder how much the GOP and how long the GOP has been in collusion with hostile foreign governments at the detriment of the United States, just so that they could wrap their fingers around the throat of democracy and throttle it until it heals too. My God, we're getting on here. We better talk about what else is in the menu here. Well, of course, I was Nadler at the top with Stephanopoulos about issuing documents or document requests to over 60 different people and individuals from the White House, the DOJ, and the Trump Organization. Yeah, I know, we should be investigating Hillary's emails. I know, but that's the way it goes. Democrats hold the reins of power in the House, and they have subpoena power, too. Well, on the rest of the menu, Matt Gaetz, he is rated as the most punchable face in Congress right after Ted Cruz. Right after. Trump has threatened to sign an executive order withholding over $30 billion in research funds if U.S. universities don't treat his Gestapo Brownshirts better when they show up on campus demanding free hate speech. And Republicans could get people killed with their lie about infanticide. Well, actually, people have already been killed. I'm thinking of Dr. Tiller. But that was so long ago. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where Trump's Space Force fantasy could cost American taxpayers $2 billion. $2 billion. That's with a B. And French President Emmanuele Macron warned against the dangers of resurgent nationalism as tensions eased between France and the Italian right-wing government over migration. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. At the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, to the rightish of the page is the chat room link, monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. To the leftish of the page from the chat room link at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will then notice the contribute button. And all kidding aside, if you could become a recurring Patreon to Netroots Radio, that recurring contribution really helps us pay the bills. And we are also in a bit of a savings period to be able to purchase new equipment, since the older ones have been running for so long, 24/7, 365. My gosh. So I also want to say thank you to our recent Patreons, and those of you who have given me snail mail address. I'll get the bumper stickers out to you right away. I know I promised that before, but I promise you this time it will come out. So thank you to our new Patreons and those who have been with us for a couple of months waiting for those bumper stickers. They'll get out this week. Okay. Let's see. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, you can do that by typing in at Netroots Radio. Wow. If you would like to follow me on Twitter, type in at Justice Putnam. I post the show notes and links diary about 10 minutes before showtime and try to get that linked up on social media sometime before showtime. I like to do that, but I'm kind of busy those last 10 minutes, so bear with me. And if you would like to follow the show on Twitter, you can do so at Cookbook West. And podcasts can be found on Stitcher, Spreaker, iTunes, YouTube, iHeart, TuneIn, and wherever podcasts can be found, indeed. I wanted to say real quick, I put out on social media that I've been a bit depressed. It's not the gripping depression that people who have depression have experienced. It's not. I might have been a little too flippant with the term depression, but I've been melancholy since my son passed, and I've had I don't know. I didn't really explain it. How can you? And the amount of characters allowed on Twitter, but a lot of folks reached out and expressed, well, their love for a fellow human being, and I am greatly appreciative of that. But I also don't want people to think that I'm going off the deep end. I certainly am not that way. Some folks intimate or thought that I was intimating something very drastic. No, not at all. Really what I was going through and have been going through is, I don't want to say a cavalier approach to life, but in many of the research that I've done, and much of the research I've done, whether it be historical, spiritual, whatever the quest might be, the study might be, one thing that I've always come out of, almost an anthropological universal, is the idea of what it is to be a warrior. Now, bear with me. I don't mean, killing and all that, but the idea that today is as good as any day to die. And when you get over that fear of death, in this supposed warrior way, you have a much more calm approach to life. That you're not filled with the fear of your own demise, and that burdens you. And so that burden is lifted. So I was kind of along that sort of line that, heck, if I keeled over and hit my head on the curb and, or got hit by a car or a tree fell on me or, some fatal calamity, that it wouldn't be so bad. That what's the worst that could happen? Well, I get to be with my son forever and ever and ever, if you believe in that kind of stuff. Well, for a certain amount of time, that was consoling. That if I were to suddenly die, I could go with a smile, no matter what it was, knowing that, well, at least I'll be with my son. But that is kind of a cavalier approach to life also, that one might not take themselves out of potential danger because, well, what's the worst that could happen, right? Yeah, the worst could happen is that you're dead. And it suddenly occurred to me, oh my God, and I'll tell you what triggered it, seeing Anna Navarro's wedding and her dad, who is still alive, walking her down the aisle. Now, Anna Navarro's, a woman of age, shall we say. But it occurred to me, I have 2 granddaughters. I am the one that will be walking them down the aisle in place of their father. My God, I can't have a cavalier attitude. Oh, well, today is no. Today is another day to stay as healthy and clear and rational as possible and live a good, productive, and full life so that when I walk my granddaughters down the aisle, they walk with the knowledge that their father lives still in their hearts. That'll take you out of a funk right now. And it did. So, I kind of have been chronicling this chronicle of grief, almost like the diary of, Samuel Pepys, in a way. But I do appreciate folks who reached out. No, I'm not off the deep end. Not that way. I'm not going to consciously check out. It's not part of my poetic, shall we say. All right, so let's get on with this. You know what? We actually have a curated show, and I better get into the curation part rather than just riff. But hey, we are a salon. We're here to discuss. This first offering here in the Bistro Cafe, a West Coast cookbook and speakeasy, comes by way of the great T-Bog. Now, I got it out of Alternate, but he's actually at Raw Story. But Raw Story has all these pop-ups that I have to turn on to be able to, even get there, but they become troublesome. So I come to Alternate to pick up some of Raw Story's stuff because they're linked. As part of a deep dive in the sudden rise of controversial Representative Matt Gaetz, a Democrat ripped into the brash lawmaker who has become one of Donald Trump's most ardent and visible defenders, saying he has the most punchable face in Congress. According to a report by the Daily Beast, Gaetz has become a lightning rod for criticism after it appeared that he threatened Trump's former personal lawyer, Michael Cohen, before he appeared before congressional investigators, leading to charges that Gaetz should have his law license revoked. Now, I know that this is, even the great T-Bog has to practice journalistic integrity, but we don't have to be journalistic integrity-filled folks here. No! We're nattering nabobs of whatever, and we're going to natter. Hey, it doesn't appear that he threatened Michael Cohen. He did threaten Michael Cohen. And you know what else this little brown shirt did? He's a shock troop brown shirt. Let's get that clear too. All right. You know what else he did? He went into the Oversight Committee room. He's not even a member of the Oversight Committee. And he went up on the dais and stood up there and glared at Cohen. And then was overheard on a phone call talking to Trump saying, oh yeah, I was glad to do it. Oh, his excuses said, oh no, I wasn't talking to Trump. I wasn't coordinating with Trump. I was talking to somebody else who needed like an endorsement in my state, in Florida. I was talking to somebody in Florida. Yeah, that's a ticket. These crooks, They're little Nazis. You know, there is a blueprint. History doesn't absolutely repeat, but it resonates. Okay? This guy is trying to pull off beer hall putsch here. Let's get clear. This guy's going to be leading the charge. First elected in Congress in 2016, Gaetz has drawn attention to himself with near constant appearances on Fox News because Fox News is there as state media to make sure that the rubes are consistently brainwashed. Otherwise, anybody in their right mind wouldn't let somebody like a Gaetz get into the political theater. Depending on which side of the political aisle one resides, opinions are sharply divided on the controversial lawmaker. Yeah, by and large, the Democrats think that this guy's a brown shirt, shock troop guy. I want to say Nazi, but, you know, our elected officials don't go that far. They should. And every single one of the GOP says, oh, yeah, he's great. He's doing the stuff that we really want to do. But he does it. He's a go-getter. He's got a lot of energy. A Democrat who asked not to be identified had a slightly different take, saying Gaetz is rapidly approaching Senator Ted Cruz for tops in unlikability in Congress. I should show you the text from my brother and myself every time he's on TV, the lawmaker said in an interview. Wow, brother, could they be twins from Texas? I wonder. We rank him as one of the top 2 assholes in Congress. My brother said he has the most punchable face in Congress. I said, I thought Ted Cruz is still number 1. He's number 2. So, well, you know, a little disagreement between the brothers. One says that Gaetz is the most punchable face. The other brother says, nah, I think it's still Ted Cruz. And yes, we will be going over a little bit into our break period, but that's okay. It's Mondays, River City Hash Mondays here at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Our next offering here in the Bistro Cafe is by David Shepardson and Katanga Johnson out of Reuters. Donald Trump said on Saturday he would soon sign an executive order requiring American universities and colleges to maintain free speech on campuses and threatened that schools not complying could lose federal research funds. Free speech? Do you mean free hate speech? That's what you're talking about. I know you. You know, the Nazis did the same thing on campuses, went in there and beat the crap out of people and complained that the universities wouldn't allow them to do it. Trump made his remarks at the annual CPAC conference after bringing to the stage Hayden Williams, a conservative activist who was punched at the UC Berkeley campus last month while recruiting students for a conservative group. Today, I am proud to announce that I will very soon, signing an executive order requiring colleges and universities to support free speech if they want federal research funds. Can this guy do that? I guess he can by executive order. We'll see, though. If universities do not comply, it will be very costly, he said. The U.S. government awards universities more than $30 billion annually in research funds, so why not stop research at universities? Since Russia might be behind in that aspect too, do you think? Everything works out well for a hostile foreign power, doesn't it? The White House did not immediately respond to a request for comment on details of the order because they're saying the guy talked for 2 hours. We've been with him for 2 years. We got information overload. We don't know what lie he told the last time. They keep coming. What was the last thing he said? Freedom of speech is enshrined in the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. But I will say that hostile speech, usually, the kind like, your rights end where my nose begins. So if you go up and punch somebody, at the table there at Sproul Plaza, the free speech thing, maybe that's not a good idea. But let me just say something real quick. I've seen these altercations, and the instigators tend to be the ones whining about getting punched. Now, Trump on Saturday suggested that Williams sue the man who punched him and also sue the college, the university, and maybe sue the state. He suggested that Williams was going to be a very wealthy young man. Really? Jesus. You mean working hard for the lawsuit? He works hard for the money. Trump continued, if universities want our dollars and we give to them by the billions, they have to allow people like Hayden and many other great young people and old people to speak. Free speech. No, it's free Nazi hate speech, you Nazi. Trump administration officials have suggested that the rights of speakers on college campuses have been trampled by student protesters who find their views offensive and suggested conservatives have been unfairly targeted. The U.S. Justice Department filed a statement of interest in 2018 in a free speech lawsuit filed against UC Berkeley, accusing the school of discriminating against speakers with conservative views, except for one thing. Everybody thinks that UC Berkeley is a bastion of liberalism. The vast majority of the student body are graduate students, and graduate students are always more conservative. God. Everybody says it's a liberal school. It is not. There are no conservatives there being treated unfairly. Crockett brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays. Over the last few months, Republicans are literally inciting terrorism. I think they've been inciting terrorism since Operation Rescue, maybe even before. Well, Republican and conservative lawmakers have started adopting a bizarre new talking point that the Democratic Party wants to legalize infanticide. If that sounds crazy, it's because it is. And when they started floating this idea, the first thing that came into my mind is that they're committing infanticide themselves. They always project. Why else do they have icebox baby gulags? Think of that. Why else are they ripping these kids away? They're being sexually abused. More kids have died than they've let on. We're finding out more have died, not just a few. Who is committing infanticide here? I know it sounds crazy. Now, no one on our side is advocating for infanticide, and no one outside of a maximum security penitentiary ever would advocate for this unless you're a Republican, apparently. There's no truth whatsoever to these claims, and anyone who repeats them is either deeply cynical and tribal or deeply gullible and stupid. Well, they can be all of that, actually. Yet more and more prominent Republicans and conservative media figures are making these wild accusations more and more frequently. Meghan McCain even goes on and goes, oh yeah, the Democrats have infanticide. They're ripping live babies right out of the wombs and killing them. Oh yeah, doctors do that. It's just, the more they talk about this, the more I'm convinced they're doing it themselves. Well, if they keep doing it, it's going to be only a matter of time before they get somebody killed, and I would say get somebody killed again. The right-wing fever swamps have spent years demonizing doctors with the ugly myth that infants are routinely born alive and then murdered after botched abortions. But the infanticide meme went mainstream once Fox News started stoking hysteria over some modest abortion rights bills in New York and Virginia. Both measures proposed making it just a little bit easier for doctors to approve a third trimester abortion in the rare event that a woman needs one because her health is at risk or the fetus will not survive. Some Virginia lawmakers accurately describe the reality of these heartbreaking situations, that restrictive laws on later abortion can tie doctors' hands in a medical emergency, and that if an infant with no chance of survival is delivered alive, parents have the right to choose palliative care instead of the painful extreme medical interventions for their dying child. These are heartbreaking decisions that are left up to the family and the doctor. But a few out-of-context quotes and deliberate misrepresentations later, conservatives managed to twist these nuanced explanations into the absurd lie that Democrats endorse letting doctors murder infants after delivery. They even said it over and 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 over again at CPAC. Every time Republicans tell these lies, they are quite literally inciting terrorism. Now, while some Americans have personal moral qualms about abortion, they also understand that reproduction is complicated, that no birth control method is perfect, and that not every pregnancy will result in a healthy live birth, that every pregnancy is physically grueling and at least a little bit medically risky, and that women need to have the final say on whether they are willing and able to endure all of that. It's the woman's choice. And apparently in this handmaid tale government they're trying to impose, women do not have that choice. And because most Americans don't share the extremist view that abortion is inherently infanticide, the anti-choice movement has been trying for years to move the goalposts. They can't convince people that abortion is really murder, so they've started arguing that murder is really abortion. And now this dangerously irresponsible argument, the kind that could easily get people killed again, in this reporter's opinion, is becoming the mainstream party line of the GOP, and as amplified by state media at Fox News. All right, let's get to our break, late it be, and when we come back, we'll go through weather from around the world and finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. This week, Love Hurts. Polish director Paweł Pawlikowski, who scored the Oscar for Foreign Language Film in 2012 with Ida, is back with another stunning period piece entitled Cold War, this time with 3 nominations, including that for cinematography and direction. It's the story of 2 lovers based on the lives of Pawlikowski's parents during the era of Soviet domination in Poland. We first meet Victor in the late 1940s as a talent scout, traveling the country looking for authentic peasant music. Upon meeting Zula, a performer 10 years his junior, the two begin a passionate but destructive romance that runs the course of the film on both sides of the Iron Curtain. Obviously, there's more than one Cold War going on here. The film does Roma one better, as it's shot not only in black and white, but in 4:3, giving the bleak Polish countryside and the smoky jazz clubs of beat-era Paris a devastating film noir appearance. Matching the cinematography is a soundtrack with everything from Polish folk melodies to Russian choral music to American jazz and rock, with accompanying choreography not seen on screen that often. Carrying the well-done and well-conceived picture, however, are the performances of the two leads, Joanna Kulig as Zula and Thomas Kott as Victor. Kulig is intense in intimate scenes and a force of nature on stage. One scene with her dancing to Bill Haley's Rock Around the Clock in a Paris nightclub with powerfully expressive facial shots of Kott's Victor encapsulates the whole movie. Kott's an amalgam of leading men from the era of Gary Cooper and Gregory Peck, quiet, dark, and strong, but ultimately not strong enough. Kula and Victor are tortured equally by each other's presence and absence, and their Cold War is one not to miss. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. Catch up with us at Take2MovieReview.com and feed us back on our page on YouTube.
Hi, I'm Scientific American podcast editor Steve Mirsky, and here's a short piece from the February 2019 issue of the magazine. Hey, somewhere in the multiverse, it's like February 31st. In the section called Advances, Dispatches from the Frontiers of Science, Technology, and Medicine. The article is titled Quick Hits, and it's a rundown of some science and technology stories from around the globe, compiled by editorial contributor Emiliano Rodriguez Mega. From Greenland, scientists spotted a 19-mile-wide crater hidden below Hiawatha Glacier in northwest Greenland. They believe it might represent a meteorite impact, but other experts say more evidence is needed to prove that the crater has an extraterrestrial origin. From Chile, one of the driest places on Earth, the Atacama Desert, is losing its microbial life because of unprecedented rains. Frequent rainfall for the past 3 years has caused the massive extinction of native bacterial species. From Egypt, an excavation near Cairo yielded dozens of mummified cats. Archaeologists also found 2 large mummified scarab beetles wrapped in linen, and a rare collection of smaller scarab mummies. From Palau, the tiny Pacific archipelago became the first country to prohibit the use of sunscreens containing coral toxic ingredients, including oxybenzone and octinoxate. The measure follows a similar legislative decision in Hawaii that takes effect in 2021. And in South Africa, students in Cape Town made bricks using urine from men's toilets in a biochemical process involving bacteria, calcium, and sand. The bricks offer a productive and odorless way to recycle human urine. That was Quick Hits, compiled by editorial contributor Emiliano Rodriguez Mega.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
In 2017, approximately 1 in 6 high school students reported a sports or physical activity-related concussion. Immediate symptoms of a concussion include headache, nausea, and double vision. Long-term, the effects of such injuries, particularly those that are more severe, can be life-changing. Healthcare providers, coaches, trainers, and parents should be aware of the symptoms of a concussion and how to treat them. A concussion protocol should be developed that includes withholding an athlete from practice and competition until all symptoms are resolved. While concussions cannot always be prevented, they can be treated in a way that decreases the chances of long-term health problems. Thank you for joining us on A Minute of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1912. Nearly 1 million coal miners went on strike in Great Britain. A period of great labor unrest marked the year leading up to the massive walkout from the mines. In 1911, dock workers and railroad workers walked off the job. Overall, workers participated in more than 850 strikes. Even school children, fed up with the disciplinary practice of caning, went out on strike. Mine workers in South Wales joined the wave of strikers, but ultimately their actions were defeated. Undeterred by the setback, the Welsh miners demanded the Miners' Federation of Great Britain to take a vote among all miners on the question of establishing a national minimum wage. Up to that time, miners' pay fluctuated with the uncertainty of the coal markets. The miners resoundingly voted to take on the wage issue. They cast ballots 4-1 in favor of a national strike. Nearly 1 million miners answered the call. Alarmed, the Times declared the strike the greatest catastrophe that has threatened the country since the Spanish Armada. The owners of the White Star Line worried that their new ship, the Titanic, would have to travel at reduced speeds on her maiden voyage due to the coal shortage. They scrambled to find more coal, ultimately taking the supply from other ships to ensure their new luxury liner would meet the advertised speeds. Recognizing the impact of the miners' strike on industry and commerce, the government responded by passing a new law through Parliament, calling for a minimum wage to be set district by district. After 37 days, the strike was ended. Not all of the miners received the wages they had hoped for, but the strike had resoundingly proven the power of organized labor. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com. Like us on Facebook and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
From UN headquarters, I'm Luke Vargas with your World in 2 minutes. Israel's Attorney General announced his intention to indict Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on fraud and bribery charges this week, throwing a wrench in Netanyahu's hopes of winning re-election on April 9th. Netanyahu is alleged to have illegally received cash in exchange for promoting business interests and for making a deal with an Israeli newspaper publisher to win him more favorable coverage. David Makovsky directs the project on Arab-Israeli relations at the Washington Institute on Near East Policy and says the fact that Israel's Attorney General pushed those charges despite attempts by Netanyahu to shut him down suggests Netanyahu, or Bibi as he's known, won't be able to wiggle out of judicial scrutiny.
Could there be a year between now and a formalized indictment? Yes, it could take that long, but I just think Israel's track record is stellar in this regard, that it pursues the law. It doesn't bend with the politics.
Netanyahu's re-election fight is another matter. He was narrowly able to cobble together a governing coalition in elections in 2015, but faces a tougher challenge now, and that was before this week's news. While many voters already knew Bibi faced a legal risk, brand new polling suggests a portion of voters have already withdrawn their support for him in the wake of the Attorney General's announcement. That's likely an unwelcome development for the United States, which is expected to release an Israeli-Palestinian peace plan crafted in conjunction with Netanyahu shortly after the elections in April. Bibi could survive politically, but to do so, he'd have to win support from conservatives that want no part of that peace plan, something Makovsky sees as a poor outcome for the Israeli justice system and for the peace process.
The worst-case scenario, though, in my view, is that he feels that the people who will stay loyal to him in the indictment process and won't desert his government are on the right, and will they believe that they are somewhat emboldened because they will decide whether he stays in power or not.
Luke Vargas, The United Nations.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 33 degrees Fahrenheit And it even feels like 33 according to the Weather Underground. We're forecast to be a bit cooler than we were yesterday. We topped out yesterday about 60 degrees. And then we had an overnight low of 31. Wow, that's a big swing. We're going to be a bit cooler today. We're only expected to be in the low to mid 50s. Winds are currently out of the west, light variable, which is about 1 mile per hour or less. And it looks like, yes, we will be remaining light and variable out of the west for at least the next couple of days. Cloudy conditions, though it's really quite foggy currently. We're going to be partly cloudy throughout the day and through the night. And then tomorrow we're expected to have our rain return, looking at a half an inch just tomorrow night. And then looking at another half inch, on Wednesday. My gosh. And I should mention that we're looking at a rainy, snowy mix this coming weekend. That may change, but we still have storms stacked up, waiting to come in. Before we get to barometric pressure, pollen is rated at none. The air quality index is moderate, which is not good for those with breathing problems, at 51 parts per million. And the daytime UV index is moderate, and it's ticked up to 4. So I guess we're getting out of our winter gloom that hid the sun. Barometric pressure is holding steady right now at 29.87 inches. Visibility is down to 4 miles. And relative humidity is at 98%. Wow, that's pretty humid. Good thing it's not going to be so cold, huh? Well, weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 46 and partly cloudy. Paris is 49 with showers in the vicinity, and they have a weather advisory for flash flooding from these rains, so take care. Rome is 60 degrees and fair. Kiev is 47 and fair. Kabul is 34 degrees and clear. Hong Kong is 66 with rain. Tokyo is 42 degrees and a rain shower. Sydney, Australia is 74 degrees and partly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 50 degrees and cloudy. And New York is 38 degrees, partly cloudy with a weather advisory for small craft advisory, winds on the waterways. And you are forecast to be considerably cooler today, topping out maybe at 38. So button up that top button, hold on to your hats, and stay warm. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Desai Martin of Share Blue Media brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays. Trump is forcing the Pentagon to beg Congress for $2 billion to waste on his unwanted idea of creating a Space Force. In a statement released late Friday, the Pentagon announced its request for $72 million next year for approximately 200 Space Force personnel and funding to find office space. Wow. The $72 million is just the beginning, though. The Pentagon wants a total of $2 billion over the next 5 years to build up the sixth branch of the military to build a space war-fighting culture. Wow. That's a far-flung departure from what our prime directive was, isn't it? At the same time, Trump is demanding $2 billion for a project that various Pentagon officials have said is an unnecessary waste of time. He is threatening to raid funds meant to build schools for the children of military families because of his fake national emergency at the U.S.-Mexico border. The whole idea of a Space Force already received resistance from Democratic lawmakers. Representative Adam Smith of Washington in September of 2018, who now chairs the U.S. House Armed Services Committee, opposed the creation of a Space Force because it would create additional costly military bureaucracy. The Air Force can take care of the Space Force, and actually the Navy has a bit of a say in it too. All right, let's be clear about this. Now, if Congress approves this idea, the Pentagon estimates that taxpayers will be on the hook for $500 million every year to pay for it. The idea of a Space Force may be an applause line at Trump rallies, but the reality looks more like a multi-billion-dollar unwanted boondoggle. I thought all boondoggles were unwanted.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers, c'est tout.
Anonymous worker bees at Reuters brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Dateline Rome. French President Emmanuele Macron, warning against the dangers of resurgent nationalism, said yesterday that France and Italy needed to overcome their diplomatic clash to work together again for the good of Europe. Ties between the traditionally close allies have grown increasingly tense since mid-2018 when Italy's Deputy Prime Ministers Luigi Di Maio and Matteo Salvini firing verbal potshots at Macron and his government, mostly over migration. Now, France briefly recalled its ambassador to Rome last month in protest, but Macron told state Italian television that the two nations had shared interests that needed to be nurtured. There was a misunderstanding. The most recent upset is not serious as far as I am concerned, and we must work to get over it. Macron said EU member states needed to shun nationalism and instead had to work together to resolve a myriad of problems such as mass migration from Africa and economic slowdowns. He also called on the Italian government to drop its objections to a planned high-speed rail link being built between the French city of Lyon and Italy's Turin, and let the multi-billion euro project proceed. This is very important for cross-border regions and is long awaited. A choice was made by our predecessors. Things were signed and commitments made, which we support, Macron said, adding that modern technologies could overcome environmental problems. Maybe. All right. That brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day. But Netroots Radio broadcasts on. You know that. We'll meet up tomorrow for Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. So stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théères, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre. Tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre. Tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.